Older Melania's. It's not in this magazine, but it's coming out soon. Would you like to hear Melania's 25 things you didn't know about? 25 things you didn't know about Melania. In Slovenia, I was a catalog model, which is what you call a model you order out of a catalog. I have no first language. I hope I inspire little girls everywhere to marry for money. Oh, that's...
Every Trump scandal is kindling for Bill Maher's sharpest jokes, but when Melania steps into the picture, the fire turns into an inferno. The Epstein rumors, murky finances, Chicago chaos, big beautiful blunders, and National Guard debacles all get tossed onto the same roaring bonfire. Maher stokes it with his trademark humor, peeling back the glossy image to expose the absurdity beneath. Together, Trump and Melania become exaggerated symbols of excess and delusion, perfect targets for Maher's relentless roast.
Just let them pass like a cloud. Well, maybe that's what we should do with some of Trump's stupid stuff. He took a 747 as a gift? That's not cool. Oh, well. The top military guy is a big drunk? Well, so is Ulysses S. Grant. Maybe it'll work out like that. He's naming the Kennedy Center after... Wait, what? He's naming the Kennedy Center after his wife? That's kind of sweet.
Ma doesn't miss a beat when it comes to the Epstein connection, zeroing in on how Trump's denials only make the whole thing look guiltier. Every time Trump claims he barely knew Epstein, the story stacks higher than Mar-a-Lago's gold-plated ceilings. Ma casts him as the guy at a crime scene, insisting he just happened to stroll by. Fingerprints all over the evidence, but swearing he never touched a thing. The punchline writes itself. Trump's own trail of quotes, photos, and cozy associations always betrays the distance he's so desperate to create.
Hey, waitress, how'd you like to pay no tax on those tips? Remember that? And everybody was like, why didn't we think of that? Las Vegas is a town where everybody gets tips, so maybe that's why Trump was the first Republican to win Nevada in 20 years. You know by how much? 50.59%. Because napalm in the morning smells like victory.
Melania doesn't escape the blast zone. Ma turns her cultivated silence into a target all its own, mocking the way she manages to look both detached and complicit at the same time. She never says enough to save herself, yet never fully steps away from her husband's chaos either. Ma quips that her selective invisibility may be the most effective strategy in the Trump household, but even that can't spare her from the shrapnel.
Husband, I'm reminded of the Slovenian national dish. a fat, greasy sausage filled with cheese. So, I once caught Mike Pence trying on my stilettos. Well, my Secret Service codename is That Poor, Poor Woman. And he gave me a bunch of hats, but he didn't ask me to take a picture in one, which I appreciated. The guy I met is not the person who the night before the dinner shit-tweeted a bunch of nasty crap about how he thought this dinner was a bad idea and what a deranged asshole I was. I read it and thought, oh, what a lovely way to welcome someone to your...
The Chicago fiasco is Maher's next target. Trump's attempt to project strength by flooding the city with federal force feels less like presidential authority and more like a bad dictator cosplay. The streets turned into theater, with Trump casting soldiers as extras in his personal drama. Ma tears into the absurdity, pointing out how every show of power only reveals how little he actually has. The contrast between Trump's staged bravado and the real pain playing out on the ground becomes Maher's sharpest punchline.
Trump never forgets. It's only hypocrisy if you had other beliefs to begin with. In his first term, he signed an executive order banning TikTok and then got trounced by young voters. So in 24, he campaigned on saving it. And apparently every Tide Pod eater responded.
Melania re-enters the scene, not for policy, but for optics. Ma skewers her half-hearted gestures during national crises, noting how they feel less like compassion and more like a PR intern's checklist. Whether it's a robotic hospital visit or a speech that sounds preloaded, Ma treats her appearances as product placements rather than sincere moments. In his telling, She becomes the reluctant co-star in her husband's hollow political theater.
In his first term, he called cryptocurrency not money and based on thin air and said it seems like a scam. And who better to know a scam? Well, that was then. Now he's on more coins than Julius Caesar. Overnight, he became the crypto candidate as opposed to Biden, the crypt keeper candidate.
Ma then goes after Trump's obsession with his big beautiful bills, a phrase so overused it practically parodies itself. He mocks the way Trump sells legislation like luxury condos, as if grand adjectives can mask flimsy policy. For Ma, it's proof Trump governs like a brand manager, not a statesman, measuring bills by marketability rather than merit. Melania doesn't escape this segment either. Ma roasts her polished initiatives, pointing out how they vanish almost as quickly as they debut. Be best becomes his favorite punchline, a slogan floating above a backdrop of chaos, scandal, and lies. In Ma's framing, her projects are more press release than progress, echo chambers of a hollow administration. Then comes the National Guard fiasco. Ma skewers Trump's fixation with using troops as stage props, treating soldiers less like professionals and more like set decoration. He paints a brutal picture of a president so addicted to optics he forgets the human cost, turning military service into campaign wallpaper and betraying the very people he claims to honor.
He laughs. I'd never seen him laugh in public, but he does, including at himself. And it's not fake. Believe me, as a comedian of 40 years, I know a fake laugh when I hear it. Because he was showing me the portraits of presidents, and he pointed to Reagan and said, in all seriousness, you know the best thing about him, his hair.
Melania becomes part of the critique, even if only by standing in the frame. Ma spotlights her presence in those carefully choreographed photos, the awkward smiles, the magazine cover posture, as though patriotism itself were being rehearsed. The contrast is cutting, Trump mobilizing troops as props while Melania poses beside him, both locked into a performance that feels grotesquely out of touch with reality. Ma refuses to cast her as a passive spectator. She's part of the stagecraft. Epstein resurfaces here, this time as Ma's proof of Trump's chronic talent for dodging accountability. He likens Trump to Houdini, except the escapes aren't feats of genius but favors, distractions, and loyal enablers doing the heavy lifting. Melania, meanwhile, remains wordless, the silent partner who never acknowledges the storm swirling around her. The roast sharpens as Ma ties everything together. Chicago overreach, military exploitation, hollow, big beautiful bills, and the shadow of Epstein. Trump emerges as a president obsessed with performance, Melania as the co-star tasked with keeping the set intact. Ma doesn't just skewer their failures. He strings them into a single act, a vaudeville routine where the crowd isn't laughing with them, but squarely at them.
Copied this list from Michelle Obama. Sometimes when I bounce light off my diamond, Donald's hair will chase it like a cat. I wish I knew why I have a recurring dream I'm pinned beneath a giant orange sack of shit. And if I could tell my younger self just one thing, it would be this. If you catch a leprechaun and he gives you one wish, be more specific.
Ma's venom hits hardest when he zeroes in on the contradictions. Trump calls himself a champion of law and order, but thrives on chaos. He demands loyalty, yet discards allies the moment they're inconvenient. He promises solutions that crumble the instant they collide with reality. Ma turns Melania's silence into another contradiction, a first lady who wants public sympathy but refuses to acknowledge the corruption standing right beside her. Together, they form a duet of hypocrisy. Ma ridicules their obsession with image, arguing that Trump's presidency plays like a reality show that ran out of plot years ago, each scandal a new season, each photo op a desperate ratings grab. Melania's perfectly posed appearances serve as the filler scenes, designed to humanize a man who openly revels in chaos. The roast cuts deepest when Ma compares Trump's dream of monuments and historical glory with the reality, a legacy defined by scandals, memes, and footnotes on incompetence. He folds Melania into this tragic comedy, casting her as the reluctant co-star, a woman who chose the role but now can't escape its ridicule. Ma tears apart their shared self-branding, showing how every phrase, slogan, and promise dissolves into farce. Trump sells power like a cheap product, and Melania mirrors it with glossy appearances that feel as hollow as the message. Together, they don't represent strength or leadership, Ma argues. They represent the fraudulence of spectacle politics, an empire of illusion, glittering on the surface but empty at the core.
Why aren't you insulted that Donald Trump thinks so little of you that in city after city he's sending in military troops to do your job? Why doesn't that piss you off? In case you took the summer off from following the news, and who could blame you if you did, America is now a country where, first in LA, then in Washington, D.C., and soon coming to a city near you, the new normal is troops in the streets. The exact thing we've never done here, except for true emergencies, and the thing we most don't want to become normal.
The first half of Maher's takedown lands because he never spares either Trump or Melania. Trump is roasted for corruption, incompetence, and his obsession with optics. Melania is skewered for her silence, complicity, and carefully polished image. Each scandal becomes a punchline, each contradiction another nail in the coffin. Maher's humor doesn't just entertain, it dismantles, exposing both as oversized illusions that collapse under real scrutiny. Maher then pivots to Trump's financial disasters, roasting the civil cases circling him like vultures. He tears into the inflated property valuations, mocking Trump's habit of calling fixer-uppers palaces whenever it suits him. The satire cuts deeper by looping Melania into the fantasy, portraying her as the spouse who benefits from the illusion but refuses to acknowledge its cracks. From there, Maher takes aim at the couple's staged marital choreography, the stiff hand-holding, the strained smiles, the mechanical gestures of affection. He jokes that their body language could be taught in classrooms as a masterclass in silent protest. To Maher, it's not love we're seeing, it's a contract being performed, and the audience is in on the joke. As the lawsuits stack up, Maher zeroes in on Trump's talent for spinning every defeat as a triumph, mocking how getting fined or barred from business is somehow framed as bravery. Melania is brought back into the frame as the serene figure who never acknowledges the storm, standing frozen in photo ops as the empire collapses in slow motion around them both.
I remember exactly what we were talking about, but it must have been something with the 2020 election, because I know he used the word lost, and I distinctly remember saying, wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that. He didn't get mad. He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy.
Maher's roast then pivots to Trump's campaign circus, skewering the endless rallies that feel more like therapy sessions than political events. He mocks Trump's broken record routine, the same rants about enemies, conspiracies, and imaginary victories, played on repeat for a crowd that already knows the lines. Maher frames Melania as the reluctant cameo in this production, popping in just often enough to remind everyone she's still on the cast list, though clearly over the script. Patriotism becomes Maher's next weapon. He tears into Trump's flag-hugging theatrics, calling them the cheapest kind of performative nationalism. The visual, Maher notes, is pure theater, especially when contrasted with the reality of draft dodges, troop misuse, and the slow gutting of the very institutions he claims to revere.